Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Historia Politica Publica. In the episode of today, I will talk about the book written by Kurt Vonnegut, Slaughterhouse-Five, published in 1969 during the context of the Vietnam War. This book has a clear anti-war message and it was very relevant in the time that it was published. Nowadays, and considering that there are many wars going on the different parts of the world, it is as relevant as it was 50 years ago. The book is a science fiction with the Kurt Vonnegut style, which is satiric, humoristic, dry, and touches different aspects such as time travel, the war, and an alien civilization which are called the Tralfamadores. In this book, Kurt Vonnegut follows the life and experience of Billy Pilgrim, from his early years to his time as an American soldier and chaplain's assistant during World War II to the post-war years, with Billy occasionally traveling through time. The text centers on Billy's capture by the German army and his survival of the Allied firebombing of Dresden as a prisoner of war, an experience which Vonnegut himself lived through as an American serviceman. In other words, Billy Pilgrim, the main character, is the alter ego of Kurt Vonnegut, who was in Dresden and witnessed the deadly bombing which the Allied threw into the city. Kurt Vonnegut, or Billy Pilgrim, in the book all the time mention how the number of victims in Dresden was higher than those of Hiroshima. The statistics that he shows and other academics share speak between 230,000 and 250,000 deaths in Dresden. Billy Pilgrim wonders during the book why this massacre was not acknowledged in America, and he answers himself. Obviously, this was part of the propaganda in which the Nazi regime was portrayed as the only evil in the war, and everything that was done in order to defeat it was good action. It didn't matter for them that in Dresden most of the people killed were not Nazi sympathizers or Nazi soldiers, but women, children, and most of them civilians. So that was a massacre that it must be announced as one of the most violent actions taken by the Allies during World War II. The experience of the war in Dresden is something that obviously had a mark in Kurt Vonnegut and in Billy Pilgrim, the main character of the novel. It's interesting because in the introduction of this novel, which acts as the first episode, Kurt Vonnegut tells about his encounter with Bernard O'Hare, which was a friend that fought with him in Second World War. They met again in 1966-67. They spent the afternoon together trying to remember all their memories from World War II, because Vonnegut tells him that he wants to write a book about the war in Germany. Mary O'Hare, which is the wife of Bernard, goes there and kind of gets angry with Kurt Vonnegut. She points out how he will write a book which will encourage other people to participate in the war, how he will write about the allegedly positive things of participating in the war, how it is part of your nature to become proud of your country, and so on. The thing is, these words have a deep impact in Vonnegut, who promised this same evening to Mary O'Hare that he will not write a kind of heroic war book, that he will expose the reality of the conflict, the death, the misery, the dirtiness, the hunger, and all the other aspects that make creating wars such an inhuman aspect of the life that is always led by the most powerful people who benefit from the conflict. Billy Pilgrim, as the story starts to recall his time in Dresden and his time back in the USA. How does he recall those? Well, basically what he does is traveling into time. In 1968, I think it is the year, he met the Tralfamadorians, which is an alien civilization that they take Billy and expose him his ideology of time, which basically it is like time does not have different epochs. Time is just one line. It's a linear vision of time. In other words, there is no past, nor present, nor future. So the things that will occur have already occurred, and the things that are happening now happened before. When I was reading this book, I was thinking that the Tralfamadorians are an allegory of the powerful people, the upper classes, the masters of mankind, as Adam Smith put it, of the world. Because the Tralfamadorians convince Billy Pilgrim that the future cannot be changed because it is already now. So all the actions that you try to make to change the world are futile because the future is already here. Billy Pilgrim initially does not believe this kind of pessimistic approach of the world, but eventually he gets convinced by the arguments of the Tralfamadorians. The aliens tell him that in the future the universe will be destroyed. It will be destroyed by one of them. And Billy Pilgrim asks them, well, if you are going to destroy the world, won't you do any effort to try to save the universe? Which he gets replied, you have understood nothing. We not change anything. So this is like it is. So it goes. And the sentence, so it goes, it is repeatedly said in the book. In that sense, I believe that the Tralfamadorians symbolize those people who mention that we cannot change the world for the better. This is the human nature to fight, to die, and so on. And it's an argument that is being repeated many times by the world leader, the upper classes, in order to justify the war and so on, saying like, okay, if we do not increase money in military armament, we will be doomed, so we need to defend ourselves. And in that sense, this kind of self-fulfilled prophecy gets done eventually. So, same as opposing to the Vietnam War, to all the conflict, Billy Pilgrim or Kurt Vonnegut sends a clear message in this book. Because the first thing that he asks to the Tralfamadorians is, how can we live in peace? Which I guess is one of the most common questions among humankind, and one of the desires that all of us would like to see in our lives. But the Tralfamadorians denied him this possibility, saying like, there is no possible. This cynicism goes into the mind of Billy Pilgrim, who during the novel goes back to the Earth, stays with the Tralfamadorians, goes back to 1922, to 1944, 1960s, and so on. The whole novel is like that, but it doesn't get confused in any way, because the kind of style of Vonnegut is so ironic, it's funny to read, the chapters are very short, which make it the lecture very attractive. The sentence, so it goes, is something that struck me when I was reading the book. The first 5 times I read, it was like, wow, this is getting tiring, but eventually I got the meaning of that. So it goes, it refers to the ideology of the Tralfamadorians, which it says basically, nothing matters, let it be, don't get too worried. It's a kind of nihilistic perception of life. So anytime that somebody is killed, somebody die, even when the animals are killed to feed the whole population in Germany, Billy Pilgrim, well, the narrator, let's say Kurt Vonnegut, say, so it goes, so it goes, so it goes. And in that sense, you get the meaning of the book. What Vonnegut is trying to do here, I think, is to try to naturalize, to normalize the death. And in doing so, obviously, we become more pessimistic, more cynic people, which is what's happening nowadays in the world, right? Like when you are watching TV and you are reading the genocide that Israel is taking in Palestine, when the thousands of innocents are being killed, you kind of lose sight of humanity in that sense. And I think this book is a real criticism of that aspect of the human life. So for that, the novel is very important to read. How Kurt Vonnegut also has a conversation with a professor, a history professor, which tried to justify the killing of Dresden. And Billy Pilgrim, listening to the speech of the professor who was saying like, well, it was necessary to kill hundreds of thousands of people in Dresden. Okay, obviously it's not good, it's terrible, but it was something that it must to be done. So something like when George Bush said the collateral damage when he was assassinating people in Afghanistan and Iraq. And Billy Pilgrim replied, okay, yeah, you're right, okay, fine. So he doesn't want to debate, but deep into himself, Kurt Vonnegut knows that all the people who try to justify the war are people who are not to be believed, because war is unjustifiable and is something which only benefit the powerful people and so on. And for that reason, this book is very important to read. It presents some existential questions such as, is it possible to get peaceful in this world? The kind of violent aspect of the conflict and so on. So I highly recommend the lecture of Slaughterhouse-Five. I will not tell more about the narrative because I think it's very important, but again, the clear message that the wars are avoidable, that only our education, our manipulation, the condition that we are suffering through mass media, the powerful people in the world, which are trying to let us know that it is impossible to stop the conflict, is the thing that Kurt Vonnegut is criticizing. And considering that he was a fighter in World War II and experienced all the terrible things that happened there, how a whole city was destroyed by the bombing of the Allied, it is important to, I think, read this criticism and fun narrative of one of the most important science fiction writers of the 20th century.